Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, breaking news, the bomb blast has gone off in Damaturu in Yobe State. 16 people are confirmed dead. The bomb did go off at Buhari housing estate in Damaturu. We also understand that some of those who were injured are receiving treatment at the Sani Abacha Specialist Hospital. We'll bring you more information on this matter as we receive them. Well, joining us now to give us his perspective on the ministerial list, Mr. Adetokunbo Bayo is leadership and organizational consultant, also the CEO of Adetokunbo Bayo and Associates. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It was a pleasure.
Well, as expected, you have different comments on this list. No, I'm not sure anybody expected everyone to be on the same page on the list, but you have many who say, there's one word, disappointments. They thought, they don't understand how it took this long and the names, but those who speak for say, look, you had to get people who would do the work. And so the argument is raging out there, even on the social media. What do you think of this?
Well, it's interesting. We waited 4 months for it. My first take would be we didn't need 4 months to get to this point. If we had to take 4 months to get this lists that came out, then it obviously means there was something wrong with the process and procedure. I don't have a problem seriously with the list as we look at it, because your list is going to be determined by your expectation and what they expected them to do. But fundamentally, when I looked at the list and I saw who was on that list and everything, and the argument has been that it's because of the screening process, the pre-screening screening, which was what was done. My own problem is that if the pre-screening process needed 4 months to get to this point, then that process itself is an inefficient process, because it means you didn't need 4 months to find out about Audiobi, for example, who has been in government in one form or the other since 1979. You didn't need 4 months to find out about the governor of Amechi, former governor of River State, or Fashola. Whatever else, even if there were petitions, a process that has to take forever to process that petition and investigate itself is flawed, fundamentally, because it's not competent. It's not inefficient. Rather, maybe let me not say it's not competent. It's not efficient. That's when you're looking at the time. So that's my first take on it. My second take, as I looked at it, is, you know, I've been here before and I made a comment where I said that I would love a situation where government, as the nominated persons, told us expectations about what those persons would bring to the table in terms of either their achievements. I'm not talking about their history. You know, we're discussing the last time about Kachiku and NMPC, and I was saying that I would love a situation where what we seem to be doing in Nigeria is appointing supervisors of ministries. Therefore, we bring down our level of what I would call screening or assessment to the mundane. Does the man have a history? Does he have a background? And I looked through the list, and everyone I can see in that list has certain pedigree of some sort. They've served in different offices. They've held positions. So if you're looking at their CV, you would say they have some competence to hold some management and supervisory positions. But we have a problem. That's where it stops. That's all we can actually assess. We can say this man has been this, has been that. But we really cannot say this is why we are bringing him on board.
So we cannot look at the list of ministers now and say this is where we think the government of President Buhari is headed.
No, all we can say is that the president is looking for men who may have certain proven pedigree in certain areas, and maybe men whom he feels he can work with. So all we can say is that this is his cabinet, and we really can't fault them, because, I mean, I overheard the man talking about people carrying petitions and stuff against them. I mean, those are still fundamentally allegations, basically. And that one of the things we've got to be careful in Nigeria is that while we are not all saints, and we should also be careful not to rubbish people who may turn out not to be rubbish. The other day I was hearing you discuss with somebody, a professor of law, who was talking about somebody who was guilty and innocent before being proven guilty. And I was watching it on channels, and I said, we must be careful, because the bigger crime is to turn a man guilty who is innocent. Basically, that is why dictum changed in law. It used to be a man was guilty until proven innocent. They found that too many innocent people got killed. So they changed the dictum to a man was innocent until proven guilty, because it's worse to offend an innocent person. So we've got to assume that a petition doesn't mean a man is guilty. But having said so, all we can say from this list is that the president tried to find men, especially within his own party, who had some pedigree of some sort.
You know, in trying to find men, what do you look out for when you're trying to bring a team together?
I think that's where the challenge arises, and that's why I've always said that in Nigeria we have not been establishing our expectations of what we want the men to be. For example, I said it last time, when the president says he wants to maintain an anti-corrupt operations in government, fine, I said it's not sufficient. That's the negative. We needed to say this is where we want to then get to. So I expect the president to say I'm looking for men who will create a visionary approach to leading Nigeria to a particular end. And so when the men's names come out, you're able to say, okay, this man is being brought in because he has this proven pedigree, one, and we're expecting, but that's why I've said it before, not just with the current president, I said it with Jonathan, that I do not like a situation where, and it's only in Nigeria we see that, where our ministers are screened without an attachment to an office. So I'm not actually sure what we're screening them about.
And that hasn't changed?
That hasn't changed. I don't know what we're screening them out about. The only minister now there who has an attachment to an office that we know is Kachiku, because he's going to be, everybody knows he's going to be the junior minister in the Minister of Petroleum, because he's already group managing director of NNPC anyway.
Wait. Is he going to retain that position as GM, the NNPC?
And that's the expectation that most people are saying, that the president says, we know the president cannot manage NNPC as his minister is going to be, so he can't do it as a full-time job. He's got to have somebody competent. So fundamentally, it makes sense
for him to be GMD.
To be in that, it means that you're combining the two. In some countries, they actually have that.
And in between, you have a civil permanent secretary.
No, what it just means that he becomes like bigger than the permanent secretary.
Oh, dear.
In some countries, yes. I know that, for example, in Cameroon, the vice chancellors are actually junior ministers of education, basically, of their universities, when they used to have a few. I don't know what it is now. So in some countries, you have a situation whereby you can have that.
Let me bring this in, trying to see if we can understand the thinking of the president while these names were chosen and then submitted. Remember, before now, that statement that was credited to him, that was said to be made in France, where he was saying that you have people in the civil service who have been there for 15, 20 years, who are doing most of the work. And so if ministers come in, they will just come in and make some noise, and the people who really will do the work are the ministers. So if that is his thinking...
The civil servants.
Sorry, the civil servants. If that's going to be, if that's his thinking, is that perhaps why maybe these names came up?
I don't think that can be his thinking, because both constitutionally and procedurally, once you put in ministers in place, they take charge of the ministries. You could run with the civil servants, first of all, while there were no ministers. That was an interim arrangement. But the civil servant is not going to be a member of the Federal Executive Council once there's a minister in place.
Yeah, but what is the implication of that statement? Because
yes,
if you say that,
I got that.
Wouldn't it mean that, look, if you're coming in, remember, 15, 20 years, they know as much, if not more than you, so
which is where we have a problem. Because what you are effectively doing by that statement is you are saying, I think that statement, to be frank, was made by the president to defend a status quo where the ministers, the civil servants were running. And he was now having to justify it, because in practice, nobody anywhere does that. I mean, around the world. The civil servant is not a politician. His job is not to create the agenda of government. His job is to help government manage its own agenda, fundamentally. Now, what happened is that for 4 months, civil servants were running the nation. And I must have been here the last time and saying that itself was an anomaly, because a civil servant is not the visionary of government. He's his engine room for doing what the government says it wants to do. Now, the minister is supposed to be the president's extension in doing that. Now, what we are having as a problem, actually, in Nigeria, and it's a problem that is, we are running with the foxes and chasing with the hounds. We are running a parliamentary kind of system. You see, in the British parliamentary system, ministers came from the MPs. MPs already were constituent representatives. They were part of the Prime Minister's government. That's why he was called a Prime Minister. And so what the Prime Minister in Britain did was he appointed a Suleiman to help supervise the Ministry of Education. Now, that's what it used to be. Whereas in the American system, where you have a presidential system where a lot of leadership is expected, the president selects a Secretary of State who provides leadership in a particular sector. That's why he has got to be assigned. So what we are doing right now in Nigeria is actually we're still using the old templates to appoint a new men. And what we are now getting as a result is that we're now, all we can look at is saying Like an Audogbe, he has these qualifications. Dr. Bunayanu, chemical engineer, PhD in chemical engineering. Therefore, he obviously has what we call minimum qualifications to hold a high office.